change in me was so incredible. Within 3-4 days, my husband said, "You're glowing." He said, you just underwent surgeries, right? You should be in pain, you should be lying down, whatever. I started glowing. And 2 weeks later, when we went to my neurosurgeon, he was pleasantly surprised to see my scan. And he said, I don't know what you're doing, but the bleeding is reduced. He said, you're not yet out of danger, but at least I can tell you that you don't need immediate surgery. So let's give this some more time. And I remember telling him, I don't think I'll need any other surgery, right? I'm convinced I'm going to recover. And that was it.
Hello everyone, my name is Srikanth. I'm the host of the show Inspire Someone Today. This podcast brings in personalities from a cross-section of our society who will share their perspectives, learnings, hacks and experiences that can inspire all of us in our journeys. Come, join me on this ride. Forget making fresh starts. How many of us can just stand up when life knocks you down? We have a special guest today who shares her bout with destiny and how she has come out winners and committed to a new inspired life. Welcome to the show, Sudha.
Thank you, Srikanth. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you.
Sudha, help us to kind of give a brief about who you are, what inspired you to kind of do things that you have been doing today. And as we kind of get into the show, we'll unravel the new Sudha that we have been kind of exposed to in the recent past.
Sure. So my name is Sudha Sampat. My husband and I are based out of Bangalore, India. We live here with our little beautiful 8-year-old daughter. For the last 20 years, I have been working in the IT industry in Bangalore. Predominantly, my focus has been HR technology. So I have worked with stakeholders across geographies in building HR products, learning products in particular is what I would say. That's a quick intro about me, but I'm sure that's not what we're here to talk about today. So over to you, Srikanth, to lead the way.
Sure. So 20 plus years of experience in the technology space, and you chose to kind of do something else, which we'll get to it shortly. And my connection with you was through your wonderful blog, Uttishta Bharata, which stands for Arise Arjuna. That was courageous and a very, very touching story to hear. Can you just walk us through what made you to kind of write it and the story behind the story?
Sure. So this is a very personal account, right? And but I've decided to share it because I think in today's world, especially with COVID and so many depression stories that you hear, I thought stories of people coming out of challenges is equally important for people to hear as well. So around 2 years ago, to be precise, on 3rd of October 2018, I was diagnosed with what is called subdural hematoma. I had acute bleeding in the dura region of my brain. And because of the pressure caused by the bleeding, my brain had started shrinking. And my CT scan was something to behold when I first saw it. Not only had my brain started shrinking, it had slightly tilted. It was terrifying to see it, not only for me but for my family. So we met some of the finest neurosurgeons in Bangalore at that time, but the prognosis was the same. Consistently, all the neurosurgeons told me they were surprised that I'm still standing, that I was walking, that I was the one who went to the doctor, and my husband joined me later. But the fact that I was leading a normal life, and they told me that ideally someone like me in their professional experience should be in a coma, which thankfully I wasn't. So I was wheeled into surgery, a brain surgery. They tried to extract the excess blood from my brain. And I went through the surgery. I thought that was done, but unfortunately the bleeding continued. I had to undergo a second surgery within 10 days, another emergency surgery. And even after extracting blood for the second time, for some reason, a membrane in my brain just continued to bleed. And no one knew why. For all our advancements in medical science, right, in neurosurgery, some things just have no answer. Like I was leading a normal life. I hadn't had an accident. I was just predominantly working from home. I hadn't hit my head anywhere. So nobody knew what caused it. And nobody knew how deep they had to go into my head to fix it. So one fine day, my surgeon, we had to come face to face with reality. So my surgeon told my husband and me that I think you may need to undergo a third surgery. And even after that, if the bleeding continues, we may have to maybe crack open like a portion of your brain, which was terrifying for me, and access the portion where, the bleeding is happening and fix it. So obviously the first reaction was shock, right? Disbelief. And why me? Why is this happening to me? What have I done to deserve this? I've led what I think is a good life, right? I've not harmed anyone deliberately. So, you have all these philosophical questions that come to your mind. And I really slipped and I gave up. And I said, that's it. I am done with all the pain. I think it's easier for me to just go and not have to undergo so many surgeries, right? And cause so much pain for my family. Around that time, I had actually started reading some positive stories, and I wasn't allowed much television or anything, but I used to play YouTube videos on positivity and, keep listening to them to keep myself positive. And somewhere around that time, I had seen some videos on how you can think positive thoughts and how you can actually change your reality. Now, personally, at that time, I thought it was so far out there, right? Like so new agey, so far out there. I wasn't sure if it would really help me, but I had 2 weeks. I was under observation for 2 weeks. I was told, you have to undergo your third surgery in 2 weeks if nothing improves. So I decided I'm going to give this a go and I will give this my 100%. I have nothing to lose. Let's see where this takes me. And from the depths of despair, I pulled myself out and I said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to stay positive. And I made a list of all the things that I wanted for myself, that I should recover completely, that I should come out of this, that I should regain my health and vitality and, completely recover from the situation. Initially, it seemed like nothing was happening. I continued to say these positive affirmations, sometimes every 1 hour, when I was eating my food, when I was drinking water. I had heard about how water and food also has prana, right? Prana, energy, power, and how it absorbs your positive thoughts. There's a lot of study out there. You can just YouTube it. Or check on Google. So I started doing all of this, and I actually started believing that, there was a point of time when I was at a stage when I was so positive that I told myself I am recovered, right? There's nothing more to do. And it was incredible, to be honest. The change in me was so incredible. Within 3-4 days, my husband said, "You're glowing." He said, you just underwent surgeries, right? You should be in pain. You should be lying down, whatever. I started glowing. Wow. And I stopped people who were negative from meeting me. Like I would just refuse to talk to them on the phone. I would, it didn't matter to me what they thought about me because I wanted to give this my 100%. So people who would come home and sob and say, "Oh, this happened to you," and all that nonsense, right? I just cut them out of my life for that period at least. And little by little, my brain started easing itself. And 2 weeks later, when we went to my neurosurgeon, he was pleasantly surprised to see my scan. And he said, like, "I don't know what you're doing, but the bleeding is reduced." He said, you're not yet out of danger, but at least I can tell you that you don't need immediate surgery. So let's give this some more time. And I remember telling him, "I don't think I'll need any other surgery, right? I'm convinced I'm going to recover." And that was it. From then onwards, I think my entire recovery took 9 months. In the end of August 2019, my doctor just smiled at me and he said, "See, we don't know what caused it. We don't know why the complications came. And I'm still wondering how you got out of it. But I did everything that he asked me to. I took the medicines. It's not like I was only doing positive affirmations, right? So I don't want people to walk out of here thinking, leave everything, just do positive affirmations. The way I had responded to it was thought, speech, and action, right? So whatever I did, whether it was taking medicine, drinking water, eating food, everything would lead to my recovery. That's how I was looking at my life in that 9 months. So I took medicines, whatever the doctor asked me to, rest, not much TV, everything. But in addition to it, I was in such a positive frame of mind that I think I completely recovered by end of August 2019.
Wow, I'm speechless. One, for somebody to kind of have the courage to share that story, leave alone kind of going through that itself is a trauma in it. But to kind of come out of it and share that story, hats off to your courage, Sudha.
Thank you. It's not an easy story to share. And a lot of times, initially when I wrote the blog, Uttishta Bharata, I wrote it more as catharsis. But then, you hear about celebrity suicide stories, people who go to the brink of, the depths of abyss and they just don't come out. But that's not all, right? You can come out of it because you are your own friend and your own enemy. And I am hoping, even though this sounds new agey and far out there, This is not that new agey. Our ancients have been saying this as long as I can remember. Every Upanishad that you read, or every spiritual book that you read, talks about this, right? The power of your mind, how incredibly powerful your mind is. My intent of sharing this is to help you.
Great. And so that touching on that, you do also mention that you live your life in your head. And I'm sure a lot of it has also got to do with the positive affirmation that you have done, the exercises that you have done from there. Anything that you can share from there on what has happened with life post 2019? How do you kind of continue to live your life in your head?
So it's not easy. So
Hmm.
when you have imminent, death or imminent surgery in front of you, obviously something in you shifts, right? And your focus is better and you do it. But when you come back to normal life, you are bombarded. You are bombarded with a lot of stimulation, right? So it's not easy. I am human after all. But my biggest lessons from what I experienced, I mean, I learned a lot, but I categorized them into these four categories, and I try to live by it. The first thing is, life is a gift. Life is valuable, but life is also finite. And you need to live your life fearlessly. So most of us live our lives like it's a chore, right? But it's only when you go through something like this, you realize how incredible, how valuable life is. Every minute, every second is an opportunity for you to reinvent yourself, for you to do the things that you love. Most of us are brought up on a diet of fear, to fear what people think, to fear what you do. But if you replace that fear with love, right, there is nothing that you cannot accomplish. Don't fear making changes to your life. You have to make it lovingly. Sometimes you have to make it ruthlessly. You have to align to your best and highest version of yourself. And that's what I try to live by, right? My life is my masterpiece, and your life is your masterpiece, right? So you should, if you're creating a masterpiece, if you're painting a painting, you will be so careful about paint you choose, the color you choose, right? Where you put it. Your life is like that. It doesn't really matter what other people say or think, right? I would say just drop that. The second thing that really I try to focus on is love. And I know, again, right, when you say focus on love, I'm not talking about loving others. I'm talking about loving myself. As a person, this was very hard for me. Right from childhood, you are told, love others, be kind to others. Nobody tells you be kind to yourself, right? That's a given, is what people think. I think it's very important to be kind to yourself, to love yourself. Because when you love yourself, you will do what makes you happy. And the more you love yourself, the more you have to give others. The third thing that I think I touched upon in my blog as well is, you live your life in your head. And therefore, when you know that you live your life in your head, you need to make your head beautiful. You would never throw junk in your house, right? You would never throw garbage in your hall, for example, or near your dining table. We take such great care to make our houses look clean. But when it comes to our head, we are constantly loading our brains with stuff, right? We watch entertainment that borders on violence. We consume content that is vulgar, sometimes loaded with gender bias and racism, right? What is the need for it? Keep your head clean. Yeah, and this, I know this is easier said than done, but do what it takes, right? Like with some people, meditation helps them, yoga helps them. Keep removing stuff, keep clearing the cobwebs in your head, just like how you would clear the cobwebs in your house. Do it every day, right? Keep clearing it, keep clearing it. Your mind should be so sharp that you're only doing the stuff that you love, because life is, too short. Life is finite. You only have time to focus on the things that you love and nothing else. You owe it to yourself. The last and the most important thing I would say is, be as you can be. Now, I know I sound a little bit like Nityananda here, that me thing, but my take on it is, you don't have to be anybody else. You just have to be you, because you are unique in yourself, right? So shine your light as brightly as you can, embrace your uniqueness, embrace your quirkiness, and love yourself unconditionally. So these four things I try to live by. It's very hard, to be honest, now that I'm not closeted in my house, right? I keep meeting people, and you're bombarded with different types of people. But when there's stimulus, right, I just come back to where I need to be. Keep centering myself.
I think there was a reason for you to kind of start thinking positive, have the positive affirmations. Now you have kind of gotten out of it. Normal life, everything is working out well. But how hard it is to kind of practice something that you kind of made it as a new rule of life.
If you think it's hard, it's hard. If you think it's easy, it's easy. Again, you live your life in your head. So I'll give you an example, right? Even with my life, I have made a conscious choice to leave the corporate world. I love my job. I mean, I was one of those blessed people who was actually doing what they love to do. But after my realization, that life is finite and there are many things I want to do with my life, I have my bucket list, and I made a choice to leave the corporate world to follow my bucket list, right? I want to work in the field of education. I want to do a few things. I used to be a professional singer before I joined the corporate world, so I'm trying to dabble with singing. But it's hard because you know where you want to go, but like I said, you're constantly bombarded. So there are people who will tell you stuff, right? Because they are insecure about themselves. So it is hard, like I said, if you think it's hard. But if you think of it as, oh, this is something I need to do. So put it into practice, just like anything else. So the minute someone says a negative thing towards you, right, you just center it back to yourself and say, that's fine. That's their opinion. That's not my reality. My reality is I'm going to do this, or my reality is that, I want to focus on this. Anytime there's a negative thought, replace it, because it's hard for you not to think of the negative thought. But as with any habit, it's easy for you to replace it, if that makes sense, right? Like when you're dieting, think of it when you're trying to diet, right? You can't have ice cream. So you go to corner house, ice cream parlor. You can't have ice cream, but you can replace it with a fruit salad. You get what I'm saying? So just like that, replace.
Yeah. So pivot back to what you want to do by finding alternatives.
Yep, correct.
Great. I think one other piece I'm sure that is there in a lot of our minds is when you're kind of going through a situation like you had, there are a lot of fears and self-doubts that you battle. Yeah, you came across positive affirmations, thinking positive, all of it. But deep down, you still have that fear. You still have that self-doubt. How did you overcome it?
That's a great question. So the day I heard that I was going to have the third surgery, I actually sank into the abyss. I cried my heart out. I wept for 8 hours straight. I wept till the extent that there were no more tears left in me, you know. And it's only when I reached the bottom, what I thought, was the bottom pit, bottommost portion of the pit, I realized it's a bottomless pit. So that realization actually changed me. I realized that, and it was a split second realization that if I have to keep falling, I can keep falling. I think it's the worst, but I can fall to the extent that, maybe I slip into depression. Maybe I take my own life. I don't know, right? You hear so many instances of people slipping. I think the fact that I reached a point, at least in my case, I reached a point from where I chose to shift. I decided that enough is enough. No one writes my destiny. I write my destiny. I think that was a shift. Now, some people do it in 3 hours, some people do it in 4 hours, right? Some people do it instantly. They don't take no for an answer. And some people never do it, right? But I think you should never give up because you are here for a reason, right? Now, whatever your belief system is, whether you believe that when you die, you go to heaven, or you believe that you die and that's it, right? Poof, you don't come back at all. Or you think that you die and then you will be reincarnated, right? Whatever your spiritual and religious beliefs are, you know that life is finite. You are here for a reason. You have been given the gift of life. What do you do with it? Are you going to give up or are you going to fight? There are only two options. Giving up to me is not an option. You have to fight till the end. And I think that realization is what helped me.
Very beautiful, beautifully put across. I think pivoting into, I don't want to dwell too much into what has happened, but again, with that, you've also been inspired to pursue your passions. As you said, you're kind of finding the other side of the creative side of you wanting to do something in the education sector. What is that, and how do you kind of plan to give shape to this?
So at this point of time, things are a little fluid. So from teaching perspective, there are many avenues open, right? I could teach in a proper school. Maybe I teach with an NGO. There are many things that I could do. But my interest is more towards making education available and accessible to children in the rural parts of India. And again, I came back to my skill. So there are many brilliant teachers out there. I don't profess to be a great teacher, but what I am good at is I have helped build technology out there in the field of learning. And I think I'll do well in the education technology or edutech field because I have that reasonable expertise. So I'm looking to work with some organizations in the field of education and help them pivot their education right module to more students. But my focus at this point of time is in the rural parts of India to begin with. So some conversations happening there, and I'm trying to put a position paper in place to see what can be done, and how changes can be done. So I'm consulting right now. Things are a little fluid, but I think they will take shape hopefully in the next few months. So yeah, keeping fingers crossed.
And that's a great impact sector. I'm sure you'll do well out there.
Thank you.
So, Sudha, if I were to ask you, say, few years down the line, if somebody were to approach you and say, Sudha, we are going to make a book on you, what do you think would be the title of that book?
That's a great question again. For now, I would say Uttishta Bharata, Arise Arjuna. That's what I would say.
Arise Arjuna, also known as Arise Sudha?
I would say Arise Arjuna. Because Arjuna, I think, and the reason I would say Arjuna is people are familiar with Arjuna as a character, right? As a part of India's rich heritage. And therefore, I think they will resonate with it. And the story is really not about Sudha or, about, I think we are all just cogs in a wheel, is what I feel, right? So my intent would be the more people it reaches, right? The book reaches, the more impact it makes. So I would perhaps make the title Arise Arjuna so that it can resonate with more people.
Wonderful. And I do see that you use a lot of metaphors related to Mahabharata. Anything else that had a profound impact on you?
So when it comes to Bhagavad Gita, I have read the Bhagavad Gita many times in my life. First time I read the Bhagavad Gita was, I think, when I was young, and it made no sense to me. I just started by hearting the words. But lo and behold, 10 years ago, when I read it, the good thing was the words, the phrases were still familiar to me, but now I could make sense of the meaning of the Bhagavad Gita. To me, the interesting thing about the Bhagavad Gita is a conversation between Arjuna and Krishna. And, how Arjuna seems in 18th chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna seems to have asked every question that all of us could have asked. There are many phenomenal verses that stand out, but one stanza that stands out for me is nainam chindanti shastrani nainam dahati pavakaha na chainam kledayantyapo na shoshayati marutaha. It means the spirit cannot be wounded by weapons, it cannot be withered by the wind, it cannot be wet by water. The spirit will endure. And I every time I face a challenge in my life, this is what I tell myself, right? Because what is me is not this outward appearance. It is, my soul and my heart. And if my soul decides it has to be done, it will be done and nothing can stop it, right? So, and everybody takes different meanings out of the Bhagavad Gita. This is the meaning from the stanza that I have taken that has helped me in my life.
Absolutely. Nothing can stop you, Sudha. I think on that note, if I were to ask you, what is your inspire someone today for all those listeners out there?
So I have and I'm just thinking, right, what would be the right thing to say at this time as we close out? I'm going to go back to this poem called Our Deepest Fear, written by Marianne Wilson. This poem is as relevant today as it was when she wrote it. And I'm going to quote from the poem here. It says, Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightening about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It is not just in some of us, it is in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Thank you.
Wow, excellent, wonderful rendition. I think it kind of sums it up to what we kind of need to look forward in life. We are not here to play small.
Yes.
And
it
so
doesn't serve the
that,
world. It doesn't serve the world, right?
Yeah. Leave your potential, leave your passion. I think you are a testimony to that, Sudha. You have overcome hurdles and leading the way out to everybody out there to say that what does it take to kind of live an inspired life. Thank you so much. Thanks for taking time, sharing your personal story with all of us. I'm sure this is going to inspire someone today.
Thank you, Shrikant, and thank you, everyone. I wish you all a blessed life ahead. Thank you.
Thank you for listening into today's edition of Inspire Someone Today. It's been a privilege to bring in these conversations. If you like this episode and have any feedback or comments, do mail me at inspiresomeonetodaypodcast@gmail.com. Inspiring someone is like creating ripples around us. If you like what to listen, feel free to share them and let's create ripples of inspiration. Do not forget to follow me on my Instagram handle @inspiresomeonetodaypodcast for all the latest updates. This is Srikanth, your host, signing off, and until next time, keep inspiring.